Hello again, Dan Albaum here. What a tremendous summer season this has been. I cherish the feedback that's coming in for my new book, The Giving Edge, the positive impact that this book is having. It's all behind the mission of helping inspire others to commit to bringing a giving mindset every day. And by telling the real human stories of 37 amazing leaders who have discovered that bringing a giving mindset gives them exponential returns in business and life, should be uplifting, should be a catalyst for each of you to make the commitment to give of yourself, your time, your knowledge, your inspiration, your support to others. What a difference you can make every day, and it's your choice. So pick up a copy. I look forward to hearing your feedback. And now on to this week's podcast.
Welcome to another edition of Market Impact Insights, your podcast source for business leadership perspectives to help your business grow. Hear from experts in marketing, sales, business strategy, and more, with practical advice for business success. Make sure you won't miss the latest episodes by visiting marketimpactnow.com. Now, here's your host, Dan Albaum.
Welcome back to another amazing episode of Market Impact Insights. You know, there's so much going on that's affecting how we think about growing and achieving sustainable success for our organization. And yes, there are new technologies. There's AI, there's reskilling, there's education. There's really a shift in the strategy and execution across all functions and organizations. But when it comes down to it, competitive advantage still is so much centered around the human factor. It's the talent that you bring into your organization through effective recruitment, and then how well do you develop and you're able to retain that very competent and special talent. And there's so much at play there. It's so competitive out there in terms of finding that top talent. And we know through voting through movement that people are not going to stay in places that are not aligned with their values, that are not providing the right kind of growth development. So the stakes are really high. And we're going to get into this whole area of talent development and human systems in organizations with Keri Tietjen Smith. And she's an applied psychology practitioner, a human systems architect, and an AI governance expert. And this is all about hiring systems, workforce design, and organizational risk in this era of automation and AI. She's the founder, co-principal of the Wildfire Group. She's also a senior manager for talent acquisition at Coupa. So she is living this every day. And I can't wait to get into this conversation. Keri, welcome to Market Impact Insights.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me. Very excited to have this conversation with you.
So what originally sparked your passion to focus your career around talent development and this whole area of human systems?
Well, I don't think anybody really grows up saying like, I want to be a recruiter. Most people kind of fall into it because they possess a certain combination of skills. Maybe you're highly intuitive. Maybe you're an extrovert. Maybe you're just unusually good at finding things and understanding people. Over the time, I think you start to feel the impact. You help somebody change their life and you bring a company someone who may change the trajectory of their business. What I learned early is that passion alone doesn't make you good at something. Learning does. I've always been interested in psychology and how people think. And eventually that grew into understanding how companies think. Organizations tend to have patterns, blind spots, and defenses just like we do. And my role has become translating between the two. I help people understand companies and I help companies understand people. And I think over the past 2 years, this has become a much bigger question for me. How can I help guide human systems through the shift that AI is creating? And that's where my passion really, really kicked in.
Yeah, and you mentioned a little bit about some of this focus around continuous learning, but when you also reflect back on your journey, what's been some of your other biggest learning? And have there been surprises for you along the way?
I think my biggest learning moments and surprises tended to hit harder when I was young and green. When you're naive, you think the world is a different way. It just hits a little harder then. I think as we get older, we realize how the world functions and we're able to take those impacts. We're prepared for the impacts. For me, that moment, I think that just really shocked my little naive heart was that the best candidate doesn't always get the job. Deep down, we want a fair system, and the more experience we get, the more we see that fair is actually exceptional because it's rare in how systems work, and that's a hard pill to swallow as a candidate. And it's incredibly frustrating from a recruiting perspective because we're often really rooting for the candidates that we represent. I've seen candidates interview with multiple teams inside one company, get 3 no-goes, and then meet the right team and get an offer. Same company, same candidate, completely different interpretation. And that's where the subjectivity lies. A lot of hiring managers haven't been trained to evaluate people properly, and they may confuse confidence with competence, nervousness with dishonesty, or familiarity with potential. And in a strong company, someone who has demonstrated success and shows a real willingness to learn should be evaluated consistently. But the system still doesn't work unless people value the right things. And that became really personal for me. I found myself unemployed after 10 years of dedicated work at peak performance, preceding a period when I also lost both of my parents and my grandparents in a short period of time. I saw how broken many of our human systems were before AI. I was an active duty military spouse for 15 years and I worked for the government. So I've seen broken systems, but AI used badly just makes those problems worse. And so it changed the nature of my work. I stopped being interested in only navigating systems and became much more interested in redesigning them. There's moments, I think, when the status quo becomes movable. And I think we're in one of those moments now. And so I think there's a sliver of opportunity to influence what comes next so our kids still have a chance in this world.
Yeah, I mean, it's the opportunity and the impact is so huge. And some things that you were talking about there that just resonate so well for any of us that have gone through an interview process and or yeah, on either side of it as a candidate, but also as someone who's part of the interviewing team. And something that I've seen carry in some organizations where the desire might be good, the intention is right to say, hey, let's get broader participation and input from different perspectives, different teams. But I've seen it be very uneven in terms of the amount of commitment, focus, and preparation, from someone, going into that team. And so to your point, you don't get that consistency because not everyone is kind of putting in the same level of effort maybe and focus. And so it can just be wildly uneven.
Definitely. Definitely. It runs the gamut and from company to company and even business unit to business unit inside of a company.
Yeah, for sure. And, obviously, there are on the candidate side, there's a lot of emotion and things wrapped up because it's to go through a layoff or to be in a situation where you really do need to get that next job. There's the financial pressures. There's everything. It feels like it's just coming down on you. And then you've got companies trying to deal with a high volume of candidates for positions. And so we're trying to find that happy medium where there's fairness and the right candidates, the best, the most qualified candidates are being selected. But when you look at this landscape right now, what are some of the most common mistakes you still see companies are making when it comes to just their overall workforce strategies?
That could probably be an entire podcast, Dan.
Yeah, it's a big one, isn't it?
I've worked with startups, civil service, government contracting, and Fortune 50 companies. A common pattern is that teams start building something thoughtful and forward looking, and then senior leadership steps in and chooses the model that's going to create the least blowback. And the fact just really is that the easiest model is not always the successful one. And that's especially true with AI. Companies are handing employees tools and saying, here, use this. And maybe they add a few training courses. But there's often no hands on guidance, no idea sessions, and no real conversations about which problems are worth solving. The first step should really be to state the problem clearly, and then you bring together the people who actually understand the work. Learn to reverse engineer possible solutions and use AI to challenge the ideas. And then you can build something and show people how you built it. Try to break it, learn, and then iterate. We're back to, I think, a refresh of like the run fast and break things, but it's run fast and break the prototype, not the people. And that's how you build for where we are now. I would say the next step is harder. Companies need to think about what technology may be capable of in the next 2 to 3 years and start building towards that future now. And that may mean scrapping the current system that we have instead of continuously bandaging old processes together with new tech and just make a new one. We don't need giant legacy systems when we can build our own now. It also means giving employees some reassurance. People are not going to become wildly creative while wondering whether their creativity is designing their own unemployment. Companies really need better internal mobility and skills-based hiring. They also need real pivot opportunities for people whose jobs will be changed by AI. I would say let the employees help redesign the work. Ask what part requires a huge human judgment and what part can move over to technology. And then take those remaining human responsibilities, kind of solder them together into new hybrid roles. And I think that that's where the work's going to go. Companies can also start investing in less systems and tools and make their own applications and solutions. It's not just people losing jobs as a function, it's software becoming obsolete. And the honest truth right now is that to build a good system, you just might need two great ideas and an API. And that's really the cool thing about AI.
Now, you mentioned letting employees be part of crafting the solution, and really getting involved in around that. Can you give a little better picture? What might that look like? What have you seen work there? Like, how do you get them engaged? How do you best harness that input?
One of the things that I've done with my team, what I've implemented is I do AI workshops. We take 90 minutes out of our week to get together as a team, and we all come to the table with a functional issue. What's not working? What's taking longer than it should? And then we talk through it. And then we'll start building. And we'll use the different LLMs, different tools that are available to us to say, like, how can we reverse engineer this problem to find a solution that's going to save us time or give us better data, and just able to improve the function. And so jumping in there with them, especially when you know how to better prompt and guide the LLMs and the different solutions, you slowly will learn to see what each different system is capable of and teach them hands-on how to work through and actually build things, not just have them refine your emails and and your presentations.
Yeah. Yeah. And so let's shift over, because there has been so much talked about on social media platforms like LinkedIn from the candidate perspective, and what it's like right now to be a candidate for job opportunities. And so when you think about where we're at and the reality of what that experience is like, what advice would you give someone who is in a position of needing to find their next job or seeking a better opportunity today?
First, I want to say that I know a lot of people are fighting for survival. I've been one of those people who have posted over the past couple of years going through the job search, and I know people are angry. I know people are scared, and I know people are exhausted. And I felt all of that. I had more than 20 years of experience in hiring systems, and I tried everything I knew, and most of it didn't help at all. Um, it's also super unhelpful for me to have peers on LinkedIn who haven't personally been affected by this market try to give advice that just isn't working. This is a new ball game entirely that we're in, and I think what ended up helping me in the end was grit, determination, and honestly, at times spite. And that's a life hack. You don't always need a positive motivator to change your life. Sometimes spite is enough. And it's also funny. And humor helps when the systems around you have just become absurd. Um, what will hurt is is you staying in denial because the change is uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, you can be a cog in the wheel or you can learn how to redesign the engine. And I would say for my secret for top notch talent to stand out right now, um, people who have been contracting or moving through multiple companies may have an advantage that they don't recognize. They've seen how 3, 5, or 10 different organizations have operated. They've used different AI tools. They've seen different implementations of AI tools and they've watched failures happen. Someone inside one company may only understand one system. You may understand 10. That is extremely valuable right now. I would say package that knowledge, learn how AI is being used in your field, build workflows, build apps, build tools, even if you create them outside of a work environment. Put them in a portfolio and highlight those on your resume. Show you know how to use AI tangibly, not just to research or rewrite. And then talk about that instead, like on LinkedIn, instead of only asking for referrals or asking for help. Teach people something. Show your thinking. Show what you're building. You should still network and ask for introductions. Applications are a numbers game, referrals are a human game. You need to be good at new things before circumstances force you to, because this is not a fad. Machine intelligence is going to change everything.
Well, and that's a nice lead into a follow up because you've started to bring up AI and some of the very real ways that it's impacting certainly how you work with your own team, but then how it affects, recruitment and retention and then the reality of what we're contributing in our jobs. So when you look at that bigger picture, Keri, overall, where do you see how AI is going to continue to impact the future of work?
I think that a lot of people move into leadership roles and think like, great, I can like coast a little bit now. I can manage the fray. But I'm seeing leaders at every level really roll up their sleeves and get back into the dirt. They're experimenting, they're building, they're learning the technology firsthand because they understand you can't lead through a transformation that you haven't personally experienced. Um, AI for me is allowing me to do things I couldn't previously do at the level that I wanted. I can now prototype processes, build workflows, analyze information, create tools, and I can turn ideas into something that people can actually test. But I'm also seeing where it goes wrong. And someone has to build the governance intentionally. Someone has to ask where humans remain accountable. What happens when the system's wrong and which decisions should never be handed over entirely. And smart companies will redesign around that. Most companies still aren't thinking big enough. They're as I said, bandaging systems and tools together. The idea really isn't to add, it's to condense. It's condensing workflows, systems, and teams. It's fewer handoffs, it's less duplication, and it's clearer accountability for better decision making. And that's organizational brilliance and efficiency. And companies like predictable outcomes. AI does too, and so do shareholders. So we kind of see how that's going.
Yeah. And you talked about experimentation, the value of that. And, you know, there's some traditional thinking where there's almost this aversion to, oh my gosh, I don't want to fall short or look vulnerable if something doesn't perform, if I'm doing too much aggressive testing. But what you're talking about is, no, actually, the value is in applying the learning you get by doing that, and stop being so consumed with this idea of perfectionism and falling short, right? So isn't there like a mental shift, certainly in leadership, around really being open to the idea of learning and growing through maybe falling short here and again?
100%. This is discussions that I've been in the room for recently. And what I advise is like failure is learning. And call it failure, call it iteration, call it growth, whatever makes you feel comfortable. But leaders have to create a safe space for people to try, fail, learn, and try again. And like this technology is new to the majority of us, so we're all trying to figure it out so that we can apply it in different ways to benefit us, but we also want to benefit the candidates in our process, the companies we work for. We want to do things in a more strategic way. AI enables that, but everybody also has to be like open to it too. And there's just so much fear. I think the best way is to like provide that safe space, have those conversations around being uncomfortable, and kind of let that vulnerability show. That is not a bad thing as a human, because it's genuine. And right now, human traits are very important. Things that are human are very important when we see what the future could be like.
And it all does start with leaders, right? Setting the positive example behaviorally. And, the teams are just always looking at the leader's behavior and making sure it's aligned with the words. And so there's this integrity thing. There's this accountability thing that I think sometimes gets underestimated by leaders, but they're really setting the tone, right?
100%. And a lot of the leaders don't know, right, what steps to take either. So we're having to, I see discussions at every level, but I see leaders go through, workshops around AI, and the blank stares across the table like, okay, but how do you go from like conceptual ideas to actually making it? And that's, you see that fear at the senior level. And then they're expected to roll out to their teams. And so that's why you have to just jump in, and pull your people together and say, okay, we're going to figure out like how to build something. And so let's start by asking Claude or asking, ChatGPT, like, walk us through how to make this. What systems do we need in order to build this, like a working prototype? Um, and then to show what the value is from that. I think it's a trickle down effect. It definitely has to come from above.
For sure. And you've worked with so many different leaders during your own career. What do you think separates truly exceptional leadership from just good enough?
I have had amazing leaders and I've had horrible leaders. The best leaders that I've worked with were sometimes just a fraction short of exceptional because they were limited by politics. They were in the right rooms. They could read those rooms, and sometimes they read them well enough to not say the thing that most needs to be said out loud. And we all have to stay employed, right? That's kind of the game. But it is an organizational weakness when people can't speak truth to power. Exceptional leaders call out things that need to be said candidly because they're trying to make the organization better. And as AI drives organizations toward greater efficiency, exceptional leaders will understand that efficiency doesn't mean removing the humanity. And that's why I say that the vulnerability and feeling uncomfortable, though that high EQ level is extremely important, especially right now because of that. AI doesn't understand what it feels like to lose a career identity. It doesn't understand worrying about how you're going to support your family or how it feels to be displaced by a system that you helped build. That emotional reality is a business reality. And so the exceptional leaders will understand both. They'll be smart, candid, and human, not just good at playing the game. The people who only know how to play the game are going to be filtered out more quickly.
Yeah, I would think part of that as a leader is taking that curiosity that you have and really creating better connection with your team, back to why the human element is so important right now. And maybe that's just active listening. Do you think it starts there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, you have to hear all the perspectives. Very few people are experts in the way technology is shifting right now and can really give a clear picture what the future looks like. I think even the experts are kind of guessing. It's kind of like a hurricane path. On the map, you see a range of where the hurricane might track. And I feel like that's kind of how we're looking at the future right now with how AI is going to track. There's higher level impacts, there's lower level impacts. I think the biggest part of it isn't the direction we're headed, it's that timeline.
Yeah, it feels like we're just all in this 24/7 broadcast, the ultimate weather channel alerts. We're trying to figure out what is it going to look like a day, 2 days, 3 days, a week, a month. Things are moving so fast, Keri.
And
That's
how do
what's
you
mind
prepare?
blowing about it. Yeah.
Yeah, how do you prepare for that? And how do you we see we see all these articles about emerging careers and how people coming out of university, and I have two Gen Z sons, how they're gonna get jobs because those entry level jobs have kind of been cut. Um, that's a huge concern. And how do we guide our kids through that when we don't even know if we're gonna make it to retirement age and still be able to hold employment? And what is that going to look like for them? And we need to start creating what that looks like, what the answers are, what the guardrails are, and figure out, what the path forward is going to be safely.
Yeah, it starts taking us back to this whole idea of what is social responsibility. I mean, in the context of developing these technologies, how they're being applied, but then thinking the ripple effects are so enormous, right? Just in terms of how we live, and again back to the societal impact. So it's some big gnarly questions that are right in front of us, and we're all kind of trying to figure out how to strap our seatbelts on and survive, right? More than anything else.
Definitely. And it's funny, even as an expert, I would say in the field of, hiring, when all the rules change, like the game, it becomes a different game. And it's really hard for people to reconcile when they've spent all this time creating something and then one piece of technology just changes everything. And it's not just in business. I mean, this is going to trickle out in life as well. And we don't know what that looks like.
What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
I don't know if I'd call it specifically business advice. I'd call it advice delivered through circumstance and lived experience. I think you have to evolve even when change is uncomfortable. That's a big theme. For a long time, people could resist new technologies for a while. I know when texting started, I was like, "This isn't gonna, this isn't gonna last," and and I refused. I think for the first year, like I'm not texting. And now I can't imagine not texting. Some people just adopt technology earlier. Some took longer in the process, but eventually most people caught up. AI just changes the timeline for us. The shift's going to happen faster and faster. The cost of waiting will become much higher. So I hate to use the phrase lean in, but you really do have to face it head on if you want to be successful, and if you want to survive through how things are going to change. And that doesn't mean blindly accepting it. Um, I am I am AI agnostic. It's something that I have to accept because that's how the future is going. It means that I've got to learn enough to be able to have a voice in what happens next. And you can't influence a future that you refuse to understand.
Yeah, this is definitely not one that the head in the sand strategy is going to win out at all, right? Because there's just this inevitability of just how it's really shaping in all facets of any organization. So it's, do you want to be part of a positive evolution and solution, or stay in denial and all those bad things that maybe you're fearful of? It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost if you do that.
Absolutely. I mean, like I get it, and I follow. I follow kind of the patterns in society. I love reading Reddit strings and just seeing what the general consensus is within people. And there's just so much fear. There's so much fear, and leadership is not stepping forward. And I say that to be our at the top of the chain, our governmental leaders. We are so far behind where Europe is in adopting governance, and now it's going state by state. I assume that we will eventually follow something a little bit closer to what the EU has been using as their regulations or their guardrails. But right now, it's country, or it's country by country, it's state by state, it's company by company. Um, the majority of companies are not yet using AI. And I recently read a statistic that only about 1% of the population pays for the use of an LLM. That's pretty shocking to me. I pay for several and I
Yeah.
have for
Yeah.
a while because you've got to try them out. You've got to see what they can do, um, and take it deeper to understand. If you're not paying attention, I would say that that is the biggest risk in your lifetime.
Mm-hmm. Well, given the state of things, when you think about the future, what makes you optimistic?
So I don't I don't know that I would describe myself as optimistic about the future. I say I'm pretty pragmatic. I mean, I see what's coming and I wonder how it's going to go and I wonder how fast it's going to move. But I'm hopeful, and I think that's more important. I'm hopeful because people are unpredictable. There's something that unpredictability just gives us, some sort of underdog quality. And really, we're underdogs just existing here on Earth. So it goes back to my earlier statement about having grit and determination. When things look dim, sometimes people step forward and they do something brave and they challenge the system and they protect other people and they change something that looks inevitable. Personally, I think there's still a lot of people who want to do the right thing. But as you said, there's a broken social contract right now, and it's a really precarious situation. And we should all take that seriously because we need leaders who are going to confront this. Getting those guardrails around AI now is the most important thing that we need. We need credible plans for workforce transition, economic stability, and responsible use. We can't wait until everything goes off course and then act surprised. We need to all do our part now. We all need to have our voice heard on this now. We need to talk about this more now. A year ago, nobody was talking. The average people were not just talking about AI. They're kind of ignoring it. They didn't really know a lot about it. We hear a lot about it transforming resumes and things like that, but not about what you can actually build with it and kind of the scale that's available to the average person, and how much that's changed just in these last years, like 2 years. Um, AI is amazing. It allows me to do so many things that I couldn't do before at the level that I wanted. My eyes are open, but my eyes are open. AI is terrifying. So I'm not blindly optimistic. I'm hopeful. And I think that hope's more useful because it requires active participation.
Yeah, there's this phrase that we've talked about on the podcast previously. That as you're talking, it's really about you facing the fear. You're like staring it like directly, and you're recognizing it, embracing, but still keeping the eyes open and moving forward. So there's this idea of just any momentum and motion in terms of really accepting, embracing. It seems like that is a good foundation if we're thinking about future success.
I think you have to know what you're up against, right? That's the only way you can make educated decisions about what steps to take next. And eventually, this is going to hit all of us in some way, shape, or form. It's just that timeline. So yeah, you've got to educate yourself. You've got to learn. You've got to oversee what your kids are doing. You've got to teach them about this technology because they're going to have to deal with it in ways that we can't even fathom right now.
So, do you have any other final advice for leaders that are looking to bring their best version of themselves to their teams every day?
As a people leader, I think of myself as the navigator of the ship rather than the captain. I decide what direction we're heading. I set the course, but we all row. I've intentionally stayed really close to practitioner level work because I need to understand what's working and what isn't at a fundamental level. You can't lead strategic change at the enterprise level if you don't understand the tactical realities. So people who only see the macro often lack the ability to execute. They delay decisions because they don't understand the work, or they execute poorly and everyone on the team kind of pays the consequences of that. I just say I stay close enough to the work so that I can understand what I'm asking people to do. I hire people who challenge me. I hire people who are candid with me, and I hire people who question things. Um, if I bring together a team that has complementary skills and different points of view, I know that that's how you innovate. That's how you spark creativity. And I think that that is going to be the best way to use new technology as we go forward. You have to create that creative environment. But again, you're not going to be creative when you're terrified of what's going to happen, that you're going to lose your job. So I think providing that EQ support, and then hiring those diversity of thought within your team, and then rise to meet the level of a team that you can be proud to be part of. Leadership it's not about being the smartest person on the ship. It's about building a crew that you're proud to row beside.
What a great analogy to put that exclamation point on our conversation. Keri, thanks again for reminding us of all of the value and just the path forward flows through a true human factor. It's not just about the technology, and let's face our fears. Let's embrace change and move forward and get to a whole nother level in terms of what we can accomplish together. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Loved it, Dan. As always, good talking to you.
And a reminder, please continue to give the gift of feedback to help make this podcast even better. You can do that by going out and giving a rating and a review. It's so easy to do on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast and Spotify. And as always, make sure to visit marketimpactnow.com for the latest in business leadership perspectives. So long until next time.